I really hate Fridays. Like I said, there's always stuff coming out on Fridays. We just got some good news, and I just got off the phone with Michael Cariel. He is very excited. And now we have some bad news. So I am going to bring up the case. This is Bevins versus Naperville, which is a amalgamation of a bunch of cases out of Illinois. I'm going to be reading. Give me 1 second here. I got an idea. All right, I'm back here. This is going to allow me to read it on one page and also still read the comments as well. So just bear with me for 1 second. What the hell is that? Are you? What the fuck? All right, I think I might be back here. All right. All right, let's see here. I keep on getting this really weird. Okay. All right. All right. I think it's better now. All right. Sorry about that. I have no idea what the hell is happening there, but it looks like it's better. I don't know. That was on my computers. Okay, this case is Bevins versus Illinois. It is an amalgamation of a bunch of different things. No, it's not the earphones. It was actually saying, look, it's not that. I'm not really sure what was going on, but it's basically, this was the case. It is basically a decision that decided all the Illinois assault weapons cases, the assault weapons ban cases. And so we're going to read through it right now. I will tell you, this is not a good decision, and it is bad. So basically, it basically goes over, what the case is about here and the act. This is the law. Illinois passed the Protect Illinois Communities Act, which was an assault weapons ban, and it banned semi-automatic rifles, basically almost all semi-automatic rifles. So NAGR sued in Naperville, GOA sued, FPC sued, SAF sued. So a bunch of places sued. They combined all the cases into one case, and it has been ruled that it is constitutional that they can ban assault weapons. This is one of the sections right here, Section 524 1.10, which let's take this off. Which is a magazine ban. They banned any magazine holding more than 10 rounds for a rifle and 15 rounds for a handgun. And you can be guilty of a felony for that. So shortly after the law went into effect, people started suing. The first one is Bevins versus the city of Naperville, which was the National Association for Gun Rights case. And then you have the other cases down here, Hare versus Raoul, which is another case that challenged it. And there's a couple more cases in here. You have Burnett versus Raoul as well. These are all different cases that challenged it. Basically, every pro-gun organization jumped on this and sued. And they wanted to get a preliminary injunction against the rules. In order to get a preliminary injunction, you have to establish a few different things. The first and most important thing that you need to do is prove the likelihood to succeed on the merits of the case. Unfortunately, the court ruled that the plaintiffs are not likely to succeed on the merits of the case. And it's a really bad decision right here. They go into the Second Amendment here, where they go, a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Here they're saying that for many years that the courts believed that and legal scholars believed that it only referred to the militia. But as we know, Heller said that is not the case, and most courts didn't believe that before that. If you read the Federalist Papers, they did. But Heller said that it was an individual right to carry. The Seventh Circuit is hanging its hat on. It said that, the Second Amendment is not unlimited, and they are going to use that to try to say that assault weapons, and I say that in quotation marks because that is what it's about, is not covered by the Second Amendment. Heller said that any weapon that's in common use and not in common use cannot be banned, and this is exactly what they are doing right here. I haven't read through this whole decision yet, so I'm going to try to do it. Then they talked about McDonald. McDonald is another case, McDonald versus the city of Chicago, which expanded on Heller and confirmed Heller. It's one of the most important two-way decisions that there is. And they said after McDonald, most court cases adopted the two-step test, that is intermediate scrutiny. If you do not recall, Heller knocked that down, saying that the Second Amendment is not a second-class right. You cannot do interest balancing in the Second Amendment. But this is exactly what they do. It's really ridiculous. They go into explain all about the Second Amendment and interest balancing, even though interest balancing is not the same thing. Now they go into the plaintiffs, and there's no historical condition to banning semi-automatic guns and large capacity magazines. As if this argument proves too much, uh, too much, its logical extends to bans on machine guns, but Heller deemed a ban on privately possession of machine guns to be obviously valid. So it's saying Heller said you can ban machine guns, so therefore you can ban semi-automatic rifles, which is ridiculous. Rich, do you want to come on? They did. It's really crazy. And they're saying that they're allowed to ban semi-automatic rifles because they said the ban on machine guns is legal, and that was banned in they didn't regulate machine guns until 1927, and then they had the NFA in 1934. So therefore, it must be legal. Right here, they're going to do military style weapons, right? Which, you know, how weapons are sorted between private military uses, we noted, has changed over time. Anticipating Bruin, we rejected the historical focus on the 1920s when these bans started to come into existence and turned instead to the Second Amendment's adoption. With respect to common ownership and use questions, we caution against circular reasonings. Machine guns aren't commonly owned for lawful purposes today because they are illegal, which is not true. Semi-automatic weapons with large capacity magazines are owned more commonly because until recently, in some jurisdictions, they have been legal. Yet it would be absurd to say that the reason why particular weapons can be banned is that there is a statute banning them. So that isn't commonly owned. It's ridiculous. We are not afraid by the plaintiff's efforts to put semi-automatic weapons on the private or mixed side of the line between private and mixed private military weapons. On the one hand, the weapons exclusively for military use on the other. We are reluctant to place semi-automatic weapons in the former category for the simple reason that the Heller court had not done so. They're basically saying that since Heller didn't come out and say that semi-automatic weapons were okay, they're not okay, which is not exactly kosher. The court has not done so. Instead of distinguishing the United States versus Miller, we reaffirm the rule that the Second Amendment does not authorize private persons to possess weapons such as machine guns and sawed-off shotguns that the government would not expect or allow citizens to bring with them when the militia was called to service. So they're saying since you couldn't bring a machine gun back in 1791 to the militia, that you can't own a semi-automatic weapon, which is definitely not true at all. It's ridiculous, right? Let's see what else it says here. It basically goes over and it's trying to say that language is pure dicta. Dicta means that it is not legally binding, which is also another ridiculous case. So basically, they say because it's not protected under the Second Amendment, the plaintiffs do not have a likelihood to succeed on the merits of the case. Bruin also confirmed some additional points that informs our analysis. First, the court said, not for the first time, that arms protected by the Second Amendment are not limited to those that were resistance at the time of ratification in 1791. Or at the time of the 14th Amendment took place in 1868. This is one thing that you're going to see very, very often. 1868 date, that is the ratification of the 14th Amendment. A lot of activist judges are trying to get away from 1791 and go to 1868. The reason why they are going to 1868 is that is the time of Jim Crow. It's the Reconstruction era after the Civil War. and they want it to be that time period because there was a lot of racist gun laws to prevent freed blacks from getting firearms. So they are using racist laws to justify their racist laws. It's really crazy. So yeah, so you're going to see that a lot in there. Let's see. Our task is to apply Bruin methodology to the 4 laws before us. We begin by assessing whether the assault weapons and large capacity magazines described in those laws are arms for purpose of the Second Amendment. If not, then the Second Amendment has nothing to say about these laws. So once again, they're saying, yeah, but Irish too, Solomon laws. Once again, they are saying that assault weapons are not covered under the Second Amendment. Units of governments are free to permit them or not permit them depending on the outcome of the democratic process. If they are properly characterized as arms, then we must proceed to the Bruin second step, at which the government bears the burden of proof to determine whether these laws pass muster. At least I got that one right. We begin looking at the plain text of the Second Amendment to see whether assault weapons and large capacity magazines, terms that we, like the parties, continue to use as shorthand for the mainly covered items in these laws, fall within the scope of arms that individual persons are entitled to keep and bear. Both Supreme Court decisions and historical sources indicate that the arms of the Second Amendment is talking about are weapons in common use for self-defense, including self-defense against a tyrannical government. But they didn't bring that up. That is not to say that there is no other lawful uses for the weapons. Sporting uses, collections, competitions come to mind as examples. But the constitutional protections exist to protect the individual right to self-defense, and so that will be our focus. So basically, they're saying that they're going to only concentrate on the on self-defense. But here's the thing. They're not going to really look at self-defense at all. It's just freaking ridiculous. I am so pissed off right now, guys. I really am. But now, what exactly falls within the scope of bearable arms? Not machine guns, the court said, because they can be dedicated exclusively to military use. Yet a normal person can certainly pick up and carry a machine gun, or for that matter, a portable nuclear weapon. They are trying to conflate assault weapons with nuclear weapons, which is very, very interesting, and also, I believe, not kosher. The court's comments about the role of the militia shed light on the scope of the term arms. It explained that the traditional militia was formed from a pool of men bringing arms in common use at the time for lawful purposes like self-defense. It is concluded that the Second Amendment does not protect those weapons not typically possessed by law-abiding citizens for lawful purposes, such as short-barreled shotguns. But the AR-15 is, and other assault weapons are in common use by individuals. We take from this the definition of bearable arms to extend only to weapons in common use for lawful purposes. Okay, now let me just say this. Stun guns are in common use, and there's only 500 stun guns in 500,000 stun guns in the United States, and that's in common use. There's millions of AR-15s that have to be common use. Lawful purposes, as we said several times, is at its core the right for individual self-defense. This approach is consistent with the historical. Okay, look at this. Here it is. They're going back 1689 Bill of Rights. That's not even. That's like a precursor to the Bill of Rights, which it's not. They're going to 1689. That's before the country. The founding era is 1791. Why are they going to 1689? I can tell you why. They're going to 1689 because they could find a law back then that fits their narrative. They are pulling. And then they go to 1868, like I said that they would. To show in order to show a likelihood of success on the merits, the plaintiffs in each of the cases before us thus have the burden of showing that the weapons addressed in the pertinent legislation are arms that ordinary people would keep at their home for the purposes of self-defense. Now, look, keeping at your home for purposes of self-defense and using for self-defense, there's two different things. Even though that a lot of people use AR-15s for self-defense, it is two different things. Not weapons that are exclusively or predominantly useful in military service, or weapons that are not possessed for lawful purposes. So what they're trying to say here is that AR-15s, AK-47s, all those good things, AKMs, whatever, are predominantly used for military services. Now, I'm going to give you a challenge. Go out there, try to find me one military that uses the semi-automatic version of the AR-15. Anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, you're not going to be able to find it. So basically, they're trying to say that these are weapons of war and only for military use. Therefore, the Second Amendment does not cover this. We find substantial support to the proposition that the arms protected by the Second Amendment do not include weapons that may be reserved for military use. So SIG P320s, are those not covered now because the military uses them? We already have pointed to language in the Supreme Court's opinion to this effect, which is freaking crazy. So what they're saying is that AR-15s are not covered because they are military weapons, and military weapons are not covered by the Second Amendment. I 100% disagree with that. And they're also saying that AR-15s is not in common use for lawful purposes. Now they are only referring to self-defense, which there's tons of examples. And if you read the Benitez decision, he gives tons of examples of where people have used AR-15s for self-defense, including a pregnant lady down in Florida. Indeed, the AR-15 is almost the same gun as the M16 machine gun. The only meaningful distinction, as we have already noted, is that the AR-15 is only has a semi-automatic capability, while the M16 operates both. So they are trying to conflate a semi-automatic civilian AR-15 to a M16. Yeah. And this is where it's going to get really interesting here. Similarly, between the AR-15 and the M16 only increases when you take into account how easy it is to modify the AR-15 by adding a bump stock, as the shooter in Las Vegas did. So now they are trying to equate the AR-15 to M16s that you can put a bump stock on, but bump stocks are already banned, or an auto sear. Auto sears are already banned. I know they shouldn't be banned, but they are. So I have no idea what the hell they are trying to talk about. In a decision addressing a ban on bump stocks enacted by the Maryland legislature, another federal court found that bump stocks devices enable rates of fire between 400 and 800 rounds per minute. So they're writing about bump stocks now. It's just freaking ridiculous. To the same effect, the Fourth Circuit noted that the difference between a fully automatic and semi-automatic version of the AR-15 and AK-47 is slight. Well, that slight thing is huge, by the way, but whatever. That is the automatic firing of all the ammunition in a large capacity 30 round magazine takes about 2 seconds, as whereas a semi-automatic rifle can empty the same magazine in as little as 5. But that does not make it illegal. Then it goes into trigger accelerators, actuators, and stuff like that, and saying that you can fire 300 rounds per minute, which is also ridiculous. So they're trying to say, basically, you get the point. They're saying that the AR-15 is basically a machine gun. Now they're going to go into the historical. Although we are satisfied that these appeals can be resolved at the first step of the Bruin framework, are weapons among the arms protected by the Second Amendment? For the sake of completeness, now we return to the question whether, if the weapons are covered by statutes before us, to be considered bearable arms. So now they're going to go to the second step of Bruin, even though they say they don't have to because they already proved. Yes, I'm back already. I know. In discussing whether assault weapons and large capacity magazines are arms protected by the Second Amendment, we have, as instructed by Bruin, confined ourselves to the textual considerations. There is another aspect of the Bruin framework, which is whether the regulated weapons are in common use. That's actually from Heller, but whatever. There is no consensus on whether the common use issue belongs at the Bruin Step 1 or Bruin Step 2. The plaintiffs argue it belongs at the second step. We will assume, without deciding that question, that this is a Step 2 inquiry, whether the state bears the burden of proof. Even that leeway, we do not find this factor to be very helpful. So what they call the common use as a slippery concept, it's freaking in the Supreme Court decision. And this is why. Suppose, for example, a new type of handgun is introduced to the market in January 1st, 2024. As of that day, 0 guns of that type have been sold. Yet, if its characteristics are analogous to those with many other types of handguns available for customers, no one would say that this new handgun was not within the class of arms protected by the Second Amendment. At the other end of the spectrum, consider the actual case of machine guns, for which for a time were available for civilian purposes. You can still buy a machine gun, but which have eventually been withdrawn from the market. It has not been withdrawn from the market. However popular machine guns might have been, either in organized crime circles or more generally because their characteristics were military in nature, the decision to reserve them for military use was within the power of the legislature. They did not allow new machine guns to be added to the registry. That's the Hughes Amendment. You can still buy a fully transferable machine gun, which is absolutely ridiculous. They have no idea what they're talking about. They get so much stuff wrong that it is crazy. So it talks about how they're owned by 16 millions of citizens, and there's 20 millions in there. But right now they're saying, and there's 150 million magazines, but they're saying that that does not matter because only 5.3% of firearms are assault weapons. Now let me go back to the stun gun thing. They said 500,000 is common use. So they're saying because only 5.3% of guns sold are assault weapons, that they're not in common use, which is crazy. One is reminded of Mark Twain's remarks. Okay, let's talk about. He said there are three kinds of lies, damn lies, and statistics. So basically, they're saying even though that there's 20 million of them, since it's only 5.3% of the market, it's not in common use. This is a terrible decision. Bruin recognized that even arms that's non-militaristic may be regulated as long as the regulation is part of the enduring American tradition of state regulations. A regulation is part of this tradition if one can provide answers to the questions: how and why does a given regulation burden a law-abiding citizen's right to armed self-defense? So they're trying to add some stuff here. That's not what Bruin said. And then they go back to balancing, which is not a thing, but they used it anyway. Let's see what else is here. I'm going to get down to the dissent. Basically, you see what they did. And here's some of the laws that they cited to be analogs. 1746, which isn't 1791, Boston outlawed the discharging of any cannon, gun, or pistol within city limits, which I don't understand how that even. Just don't understand. It's then there's the Bowie knives. You always see Bowie knives being cited as places that ban Bowie knives. In 1800s, that restricted the carry of dangerous and concealable weapons, slingshots, metal knuckles, and Bowie knives, daggers, pistols, and clubs. And then it talks about 1934, which 1934 is not from the founding eras. And then 1968, which is also not from the founding eras. And then 1986, which also is not from the founding eras. So it just goes over the laws here. There was a dissent, and they did call them out, saying that the court is definitely showing their activism and their hatred for the Second Amendment. But what this is the Seventh Circuit working their way around to try to make themselves a carve out, which is ridiculous. But yeah, that's it. Just wanted to do a quick little video here to let you know that according to the Seventh Circuit, assault weapons are not protected by the Second Amendment. I 100% disagree with that. And I know you guys do too. All these cases are going to be appealed. No doubt in my mind. We're going to have to wait and see if they're granted cert. But one of these assault weapons cases, assault weapons like that, is going to be brought up to the Supreme Court. This might be the one, because the other one is still going to the ninth, and that is the Duncan case. So we'll see it, but they are going to file for a writ of certiorari with the Supreme Court, which is a petition to the Supreme Court stating that they want the Supreme Court to look over it because they believe that it is unconstitutional. So it's judges. So we'll see what happens here. But yeah, it is a defeat, but we will win in the end. I have no doubt. And there's always civil disobedience no matter what. I'm not giving up my ARs. So if Virginia or nationally they say you got to get up your ARs, just not going to do it. Not going to give my AKs up. Not going to give my AUGs up. Not going to give anything that they consider an assault weapon up. That's my red line in the sand, and I won't cross that line. That is it. I will not comply, as Diane Mueller once said to Congress. All right, guys, that's it. Any questions before I go? If not, I am going to take off and go have dinner. There is a reason why I wait down here until late on Friday nights because there's always something that is going to break on Friday nights. This was not unexpected. I kind of expected this from the Seventh Circuit. The Seventh Circuit is terrible. Yeah, I should give you that link, shouldn't I? I'm going to link the decision for you guys. So if you want to read the decision, you can go ahead and read the decision. And that is not what I want to do. Buy my book, by the way. The link's in the description. Let me just grab this link really quick. And I'll just throw it in there. This is a court decision. It affects the Illinois assault weapons ban. All right. Yeah. Mark is definitely going to have a field day with this. Yeah. Yeah. So you got your book. It is big, right? Yeah, I believe that everyone is gonna go to SCOTUS and ask him to review it, but we'll see what happens. This is not an unexpected choice. The battle is not over, and we will win. All right. I will see you guys later, and yeah, have fun. Enjoy your weekend.